Chairwoman, thank you very much. Vice Chairwoman, thank you. I have so many questions and so little time. I want to use some of my time to make a few comments. But let me start with indicating my sharing concerns with my colleagues who spoke previously, the senator from Mississippi and the senator from Alabama, and what I expect the senator from North Dakota to say. Drought is a damning circumstance in many places across the country, and especially at home in Kansas. 79% of the acres in Kansas have been under some form of drought, most of it severe for the year. We have reduced 79% of our wheat crop. We have not had a wheat crop this small since 1961 because we can't grow a crop. You add that to all the other features of high input costs, low commodity prices, high interest rates, and the damage is real. Drought is no disaster is anything easy to experience. And we have our share of other kinds of disasters in Kansas, most notably tornadoes. But drought is something that is so discouraging, so depressing. We have a tremendous increase in the number of mental health and indications in regard to our farming population. I know how it must feel to be a farmer whose great-grandfather succeeded in keeping the farm together, their grandfather, their father, and now it becomes the time, and I should say grandmother and mother, keeping this farm together. But today's farm family, they have this sense that if they did it, why can't I? I'm a failure. And drought is this depressing thing that weighs on a farmer every day. Even I from here look at the weather, the radar every day to see if there is any hope. And I want to stress to my colleagues on the committee the importance of agriculture disaster. I don't want to say how many years I've been in Congress, but I would say that I've been on the Ag Committee or the Ag Appropriations Subcommittee all of my time here. And this is as dire a circumstance that I can see in my time in trying to address the saving of rural America. So this is not something that we ought to consider unimportant. It is hugely important. I would tell you, Secretary Small, that I do think that this committee, the Congress, ought to be prescribing in giving the Department of Agriculture specific directions about how ag disaster funds should be spent without some, but also with some level of flexibility to take care of the things that we may have missed. But I also want to I have mentioned you, Secretary Small. You said something that I'd highlight for you is important. This will seem out of off point, I suppose. But we are battling OSHA with new rules in regard to safety for firefighters. Almost 90+% of our firefighters in Kansas are volunteers. And the OSHA rules and regulations that they are proposing will eliminate the capability of small-town Kansas and small-town America. We have a noon whistle in my hometown that sounds at noon, but it sounds when there's a fire. And as you said, when you saw the volunteers that run to the rescue, others have testified to people who have lost their own homes but come to the rescue of their neighbors. Those are volunteer firefighters across Kansas, and I would encourage the Department of Agriculture to express the importance of that, the role of firefighters, as OSHA makes its final determination about these rules. Then, Ms. Guzman, Secretary or Administrator, we have SBA loans that come from the days of the pandemic, IDEL, and Paycheck Protection. Our Wichita Regional Office is working closely with us, but what happened in too many instances was people who claimed to be somebody else and got those loans, and now the people who are paying the price for that fraud are the people who the SBA and the Treasury Department are pursuing for repayment of loans they never made, never applied for, and never received. And I just would encourage you to again reach out and find a way to put the misery that these individuals are going through no fault of their own, that the circumstances they find themselves in. And then finally, to a more germane perhaps topic, again, what I think I said is important in all ways of how we fight disasters and how comprehensive the problem is at home. But I also would add, nothing is included in this appropriations bill at this point in regard to NASA. And Senator Shaheen and I are responsible in some ways, many ways, for the appropriations for NASA and the disasters that they've experienced over a long period of time, including in Guam, as well as Kennedy, Johnson, and Stennis, are dramatic and huge and damaging to the capability of NASA to fulfill its mission. Finally, what I want to make certain is I want to express my disgust, dissatisfaction. I sound bold when I say disgust, then I feel uncomfortable being that way, and I change the word to dissatisfaction, excuse me. Disgust and dissatisfaction about our inability to do an appropriation bill for 2025 in this committee, in this session, before the end of the year. And it seems one more time we're going to fail to have that opportunity because decisions made elsewhere. I use that to say that, in my view, this committee, the discussions we had in the reorganization of the Republican conference this year revolved around how to get the Senate to work again and for us to have meaningful work to do. And the answer every time is let the committees do their work. And I'm fearful that in this instance of this disaster program, that once again, this will be shuffled off to somebody else, not the Appropriations Committee, to complete the details. And I would urge the leadership of this committee and all of us to lobby our leaders to remind them that this is the committee that should have jurisdiction over what we're talking about today, and this should not be a one-shot hearing with the administrators of the various agencies and departments that are affected by this. This ought to be our work from now till the end of the year. We claim, and I believe it's true, we have the time to complete the full FY25 appropriation bill, if we're not going to do that, we certainly have the time to be the committee that's responsible for the work that's before us today. Thank you.
Well, amen, Senator Moran. I would bet the entire committee support your disgust. Senator Baldwin.